years with just a good group we've discussed some good books, some pretty lousy books, and some interesting books. And then thanks to Ed, who's actually on the call, Ed Namias, we read the Carole King book. And after we finished it, we were kind of batting around ideas, and we said, first of all, I realized my own limitations as a book group leader because musically, though I love music and love the music of Carole King, I don't have the depth of knowledge to actually conduct a conversation. Um, so we said, well, should we call UCLA? Maybe we can find somebody on faculty. Should we call SC, somebody who might on faculty? And then I said, wait a minute, we have Tolly Tadmore on staff. So I called Tolly and she said, not only is this something that I have a particular love for, but I actually have presented about this in the past. So
Ah,
what we're blessed to have is somebody, and Tolly's been a part of our community for my goodness, how many years now, Tolly?
four.
4 years. And where we thought our music couldn't get any better with David Cates, it's now gotten even better with Tali's spirit and heart. And she's just wonderful to work with, wonderful to be on the Bema and know that she's behind you interpreting the music. And she's just a pleasure to have. So when I called her and I said, Tali, are you interested? She said, I'd love to. So here we are. And I really hope you enjoy. And again, if you have questions, Talia has actually said that if there are questions as she's going on that for clarification or related to the presentation, she'd like me to interrupt her. And she's an Israeli, so she has no problems with me interrupting her. And she'll also tell me to be quiet if I need to know that. But otherwise, I'll collect your questions and ask them at the end. So with that, I'm going to actually pin Tali's video, and she is going to I'm not going to do more than I'm a spotlight for everybody. Um, and she'll share her screen and share things with you.
Okay.
Thanks, Tali, again for doing this, and thanks to all of you for joining us.
My pleasure. Okay, let's get this show started.
Tali, I just meet. Hold on.
Okay, can you hear me? Ron, is the slideshow good?
Yeah, it's
You see
perfect.
it? Okay, great. Hello, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to be here talking about Jewish music. It's just one of my favorite topics. I read the Carole King book and I have thoughts about that. And then also separate from that, I want to talk about sort of the influence of Jewish music in general on the great American songbook. So, just a few introductions. Thank you, Rabbi, for introducing me. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, a word about music in general, and a word about Jewish music. And then I'm going to launch into the bigger part of this talk, which is the influence of elements of Jewish music on American music. And then I'm going to kind of, pause that and we're going to look at the music of Carole King. There's some observations in the book that I wanted to kind of address and then add some of my own observations on her music. And then, at some point I'll stop and gladly take some questions or comments. So, a little bit about me. Those of you who don't know me well, I was born in Tel Aviv. And then when I was 3 years old, my family moved to the United States for 3 years. My father did his postdoctorate at Caltech for a couple of years. And then he did a little stint working for NASA in Virginia, Hampton, Virginia. So I was there for kindergarten. And that's really where I picked up the language, right? I don't have much of an accent, even though it's not my mother tongue. And then after that, we went back to Israel and I finished my childhood there. And I arrived here, what I thought was a gap year. And here I am still. But it was in Virginia, whoops, that I first discovered the piano. That is a picture of me. I think I'm maybe 4 or 5. I believe, and that's my first keyboard. I believe that every item in this photo was purchased at J.C. Penney. I think so. People probably had a similar furniture set. Anyhow, that's where I started playing. My mom got me this little keyboard and taught me, how to read kind of basic notes. Then we went back to Israel. I started lessons at the Israeli Conservatory in Tel Aviv, which right now looks amazing. It looks like this. When I went there, it looked like that. I can still, smell those trees. And that's where I met my teacher and my mentor, Malka Mevorach, who was my teacher from first through 12th grade, and to whom I owe my life. She gave me my Torah of music, and she taught me how to be a pianist and a musician and a human being. So every time I present, I always dedicate everything to her. So then I finished high school. My father had the opportunity to come to UCLA on an extended sabbatical, and I joined him. Not many of you know that I did not actually study music, because what work could there possibly be in music, right? So I got my degree in applied mathematics, and then I decided, at that point, I was working so much as a musician. I was actually kind of putting myself through college by playing for singers and choirs and groups. And so I auditioned for the USC Music School, and I got in, and I got the rest of my degrees there. This reminds me of the story of Leonard Bernstein. When he told his father that he wants to be a musician, he said that his father screamed as if he had said that he wanted to become a beggar, because his father imagined, he'd be this like fiddle player showing up at weddings and begging for some coins. And decades later, Leonard Bernstein's father was asked about this anecdote. You screamed when he said he was going to be a musician. And he said, well, how was I to know that he would become Leonard Bernstein? So hopefully my parents have stopped screaming, but no, I'm joking. They were very supportive, and lucky for me, I made the turn back into music, into my true passion. I've been extremely fortunate to have a wonderful career working in a variety of places with a variety of people, always alongside my career in Jewish music, Jewish worship music, and I'm the luckiest person in the world to have my job at Stephen Wise, a place where music is so highly valued, and where I get to work with amazing people in helping to preserve the music of our people. So that's a little bit about me. A word about music before I talk about the actual music, okay? This is something I do often in talks, but it has a special twist in this talk, and you'll see why. So here are a variety of quotes about music. I always like to because it's so hard, right? Like, why does everybody listen to music? What is it about this thing? What does it do? And different people have different ways of describing it. And you can kind of read the quotes, right? Music is one of the most magnificent and delightful presents God has given us, right here at the top right. Or music is a shorthand of emotion. And then I flip the page and I show you who said which quote, right? So then you see, okay, everybody kind of uses their world and the words that they're used to, right? So the one about music is a gift from God is by Martin Luther. Okay, that makes sense. I love this one. This is by Bob Marley. One good thing about music, when it hits you, you feel no pain. It almost sounds like he's talking about a hit like from a bong or something, right? Or music is a shorthand of emotion, Leo Tolstoy. I'm guessing that for writers, writing in shorthand is valuable, right? So you see how people use Richard Nixon talking about playing the black and the white notes together, right? So people kind of use their world of references to describe music. And the quote that I love the most, that for me resonated the most about music in my life, is the following quote. This is by Dr. Donald Winnicott. Winnicott was a child psychiatrist, I believe the first of his kind. And one thing he was obsessed with was, why do kids play the way they play? They have this like imagination thing going, and it's kind of, they'll take events from the real life or personalities from real life, but then there's like this imagination thing. And like, why, how can they sit for hours and do that? And why? What does it serve them? What kind of therapy is this for kids? And one connection he tried to make is between how kids play and how artists no pun intended, or pun intended, actually, play music, right? So here's what he said about artists. In the artist of all kinds, I think one can detect an inherent dilemma which belongs to the coexistence of two trends: the urgent need to communicate and the still more urgent need not to be found. So I sometimes wonder, how could it be, I'll play one piece, I'll play, I don't know, a minuet by Bach. I learned it when I was 7. I still play it, right? 40 years later, I'll play it probably until I die. Like, why is it? What else am I like squeezing out of it? And reading this quote, I understood, I don't know if it's squeezing out more or that there's this tension, right? That's never resolved, right? Wanting to be found, but not wanting to be found. Now, I've had this quote in my back pocket for at least 30 years. So imagine my delight when I started reading the Carole King book that some of you read. And right here on page 3 is the following. It's almost verbatim. Look at this quote. After much cajoling, Carole King, finally agreed to meet with McGrath. Much to his surprise, she spoke for hours, often in tears. Now listen to this. McGrath witnessed the struggle between her desire to tell her story and the primal need to lock it all away. I was like, wait a second, dude, that's like exactly the Winnicott quote, right? The two trends, the urgent need to communicate and the still more urgent need not to be found. And then page 6, she gave her permission to produce the show. This is the show somebody mentioned earlier. But she also told them she would never attend a performance or be involved in any fashion, never, ever. And then the writer writes, this ambivalent about herself is a persistent refrain in King's lengthy, remarkable career. So one way in which I so appreciated this book, right, is that it had that interest in kind of exploring the psyche of this very famous person who also went to great lengths to remain very, very private. So that's my little word about sort of general music before we start. And finally, a word about Jewish music. I have a colleague who, to the extent that I know something about Jewish music, he's a church music expert. And once in a while, he'll call me to sub for his organist if he's sick for a rehearsal or something. And I love doing it because I just love learning that repertoire. And they have, from Bach to Mozart to I don't know what. And I green with Jesus envy that they have this music, and it's. But there are reasons, right, why sort of Judaism is not known for its traditional music. It does not have the rich heritage of the church. It does not. The music, the Jewish synagogue never sponsored these great composers, at least not until recently. But there are reasons for it, and we need to know what those are. So there are several reasons. So one is the year 70 CE, the temple is destroyed, and there is issued a rabbinic edict saying, we are in mourning until the third temple is rebuilt. So there's no music. You're not allowed to use instruments, at least not in Jerusalem. And to this day, if you're an Orthodox Jew having a wedding in Jerusalem, you're not going to have a band. You're allowed to sing, and you're allowed to have one guy with a drum, with like a hand with a tof, Another issue is tzniut, right? Women aren't allowed to sing in public, right? Only in front of other women. So, okay, you're cutting like half of your congregation. And another issue, Hebrew is written right to left. Written music is left to right. Let me tell you, that's a real pain when you're trying to read a choir score that's in Hebrew, right? You're reading kind of one syllable at a time. It's a mess. Instruments. You're not allowed to play instruments on Shabbat. When I was a child, we lived in an apartment building in Tel Aviv. I was not allowed to practice on Shabbat out of respect for our religious neighbors. And finally, a preference for oral tradition in order for written stuff to not fall in the wrong hands, so to speak. So for all these reasons, Jewish music, it survived kind of in our memories, little bits of it. So what do we have? Well, we have Torah cantillation. We have Nusach, which is basically cantillation of liturgy. And both those things are written using certain modes that may be unique to Judaism. Now, hear me out on modes, because if you've ever taken a high school course on music theory, you're going to be like, musical modes? I'm getting off the Zoom right now. I don't want to hear. I already failed that class once, right? I don't want to hear it. I promise I will explain it as easily as possible. When we say modal music or Jewish modes, or we use that word modes, all we mean to say is it's not the default standard scale that's used in classical music. That's it. So classical music, I'll give you an example, okay? You have a major scale, right? Easy enough. We have certain distance between each note, okay? And each note implies a certain color underneath it, or we call it a harmony. Okay? All modes means is that you took one of those distances and you tweaked it. So instead of, for example, 1, 2, 3, I'm gonna take 2 and I'm gonna kind of twist it down. 1. You hear that? Here's normal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's modal. 2, 3, 4, 5. Yismechu v'malechutecha. Right? Sounds kind of Jewish, right? So that happens to be the Ahava Rabbah mode. We might get back to it a little bit later. So this is what I mean by modes, and we'll see more of this. Okay, now to the sort of crux of the talk, right? Here are some of the Jewish composers of the American Songbook. We have Irving Berlin, or Isidore Balin, as he was known, George Gershwin, Jerome Kern, Richard Rodgers. I can't answer the question, how come there were so many Jewish songwriters? I don't know if it's the same reason there are so many Jewish Nobel Prize winners. I really don't know. But the question I can answer is, how did their Jewish heritage seep into their music writing? I can show you that, okay? So let's get started with an example. This is a great example because it really spans thousands of years, okay? Some of you may know this song by Paul Simon.
Many is the time I've been mistaken, and many times confused. Yes, and I've often felt forsaken, and certainly misused. Oh, but I'm alright, I'm alright. I'm just weary to my bones. Still, you don't expect to be bright and bon vivant, so far away from home, so far away from home.
So we're going to listen just to the beginning one more time. You're going to hear two phrases. One that descends, many's time I've been mistaken. And then he jumps, and many times confused. Let's just listen to the beginning one more time.
Many's the time I've been mistaken, and many times confused.
Then he repeats the pattern.
Yes, and I've often felt forsaken, and certainly misused.
Okay, Paul Simon wrote the words to this, but he did not write the melody. He wrote parts of the melody, but he adapted an earlier melody that we can hear by Johann Sebastian Bach. This is how this one goes. it's the same melody. Na, dee, da, 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 da. Many is the time I've been mistaken. But Bach, of course, wrote it as a sort of church congregational chorus, right? His choruses are rhythmically absolutely dumb. It's like nobody's gonna make a mistake on this, right? Very, very kind of blocky. Okay. But Bach also, he did not write this melody. He also did not write these words. He adapted an earlier melody by Hessler that was a little more dance-like, sort of Hessler's, end of Renaissance. You're going to hear, it's the same melody, but it's a little more dance-like. It's in what we call triple meter. Bum, 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 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Take a listen to this. Okay, so Mr. Hessler was inspired by quite a raunchy German folk song from the 1400s. I'm all mixed up. This tender maid has done to me. I'm totally lost. My heart is sick and sore. He set that to music, and then he kind of kicked the ball back into the sacred music realm and wrote, "Oh, head full of blood and wounds, full of pain and full of derision." And then Bach took that and also made the music more conservative. And then Paul Simon made it into a pop song. Let's just 5 seconds to the original German folk song. Oh, oops. There we go. My Gott ist mir verwirrt, das Nacht ein Jungfrau sagt. Okay, very nice, Tali. You showed us how Paul Simon all the way to the 1400s. But what's the connection between Jewish music and all of this stuff? Well, for this, we have to make a much larger leap, about 1,000 years. And this part of the lecture is thanks to this gentleman, Avraham Tzvi Edelson. Edelson was a little bit of a nut, from Latvia, studied in Berlin, Leipzig, could have had a marvelous career in Europe. And instead he started traveling. He traveled to South Africa, somehow made it to then Palestine, arrived in Jerusalem, and was like, wow. He was an ethnomusicologist of sort, and the first Jewish ethnomusicologist. And he realized that every door he opened in Jerusalem, there was a minyan from a different place in Yemen and a different place in Iraq and a different place. And each one of them had their own cantillation and their own nusach and their own modes. And he bought one of those, half a ton weighing, what is it called? A phonograph or whatever, like a tape recorder. And he recorded everything. And it's really because of him that we have all this, thousands and thousands of recordings. And he wrote sort of the foundational books on Jewish music and Jewish modes. And fun fact, he is the composer of Hava Nagila. You might think Hava Nagila is older. It's not. He wrote it in Jerusalem. He was commissioned to write something for some celebration, and he borrowed an old Hasidic tune, and then he wrote the B section on his own. Anyhow, Edelson, one of the things he studied and knew very well was Christian chant, Gregorian chant. And he, just the same way that Jewish liturgy made its way into Christian liturgy, right? Sanctus, Sanctus, Sanctus is Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. And Dies Irae Untanek Tokef, right? Like pieces of Jewish liturgy made their way into masses. Same thing with our chants. So, for example, Gregorian chant, this is tone 3, this is from the 4th century. And again, this is courtesy of Edelson. Kyrie eleison. I'll sing it again. Kyrie eleison. Compare that with Munach Revi'i from the same period. Vaikra Moshe. Right? So same intervals, same shape of descending phrase, same ending, it cadences on the same note. It's not identical. It's not identical, but the contour is the same. And given that these chants are 100% the foundations of all of tonal music, it's quite astounding how similar they are. Once again, Kyrie eleison vayikra Moshe, and the second part of the phrase as well. Domine miserere lechol ziknei Yisrael vayomer aleihem. Right? You hear the similarities there. So now when you look at Kyrie eleison, sometimes I feel mistaken. You see how it's not a direct quote, but you can see how the language 1,000 years removed had evolved from these portions of chant. And thus we have a connection, an almost 2,000-year connection from Paul Simon through Bach, through Renaissance, through folk music, through Gregorian chant, all the way back to Munach Revi'i in Babylonian times. So quite amazing. Now, Edelson made the connection between the Christian and the Jewish back in the 4th century. The person who put this whole thing together is Mr. Jack Gottlieb, who wrote this incredible book. Incredible, so funny. Oh my God, I cannot recommend it. If you like music, if you're liking my talk, please go get this book. It's called Funny, It Doesn't Sound Jewish. And maybe the most Jewish thing about it is that Jack Gottlieb recalls that every person in his sphere, when he told them the title of the book, told him that that's a horrible idea and it won't work. Jews just have so much chutzpah. I love it. Anyhow, so Jack Gottlieb, this example is taken directly from his book, and is just such a wonderful example because it shows so many ways of adaptation. Let's look at other ways of adaptation. They're sort of the obvious way, right? Where you hear a song in a different language and you're like, I really like that melody. I'm going to translate or I'm going to write new words. For example, Girl from Ipanema is originally this song. It was not in English.
Olha que coisa mais linda, mais cheia de graça, ela menina que vem e que passa, doce balanço, caminho do mar.
This old music is just so good, right? I could listen to all this, but anyhow, so our example for one of our examples tonight is by Mir Bist Du Schön, originally a Yiddish song sung by the Berry Sisters.
Ich will dir sagen, ich gleich zu Herrn, als die sollst mir Liebe erklären. Wenn dir jetzt mit die Augen wollt ich mit dir geflogen, wie die willst, sag mich nicht ein, wenn die hast a bissele Sechel, und wenn die weißt ein arischen Schmechel, wenn die tanzt wie ein Indianer bist, a vieler Galizianer, so gilt das Hart mich nicht.
All right, I'll stop that there. So, okay, I moved the Yiddish words are here on the left side, and now the English words are here. So you'll say to me, no, Tali, that's not a big deal. They just took the melody and they wrote English words. Like, that's not an impressive musical adaptation. And you're right, it's not an impressive musical adaptation, but what we learn from that actually in the translation of the text, because it's not an exact translation. Look at the Yiddish. The Yiddish, even though it's meant to compliment, right? Like, it doesn't matter, like, to me you're beautiful. Yeah, but it comes after, like, a whole verse that looks like, those Yiddish curses that are really, really long and very, very colorful, right? If you were as black as tartar, if you had cat eyes and if you limped and had a wooden foot, right? If you had a moronic smile, not that you do, but if you had a moronic smile, and if you had Vayazusu's brain, Vayazusu is one of Haman's sons. If you were as wild as an Indian, or even, God forbid, if you were a Galicianer, right, a total simpleton, I'd say it doesn't matter to me. You're pretty, but like it's wow. But we get the humor of it, and of course, the translation in English, if they just sang those words, it would kind of sound mean and racist and all kinds of things. We get the humor in it, right, as Jews, but then it was translated into English. It's completely vanilla. Of all the all the boys I've known, and I've known some, until I first met you, I was lonesome, and when you came in sight, dear, my heart grew light, and the world seemed new to me. Like, that's much more sort of appropriate. But if you think it's just a mere translation, you miss the cultural adaptation, which I find fascinating in this case in the lyrics. These are the Hot Sardines singing by Mir Bistushain in English. Let's just listen to a little bit.
Of all the boys, 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 boys. Of all the boys I've known, and I've known some. First met you was lonesome. Came inside of my heart, grew like the world was new to me. You're swell, I'll admit you deserve expressions that fit you. Rack my brain hoping to explain things you do to me. By Mir Bistushain, please let me explain. By Mir Bistushain means that you're grand. By Mir Bistushain, again and again, means you're the fairest in the land.
Ah, such a great track. The Hot Sardines. All right, so that was a more obvious sort of musical borrowing, right? Just one complete song, wrote different lyrics. Here's some less obvious musical influences, okay? I promised I would make the modes not be painful, okay? I talked earlier about this mode, where we have this as opposed to, right? That's called the Ahava Rabbah mode. A different mode, that's a little less pungent, is the Adonai Malach mode, and it comes from this part in the liturgy. Adonai Malach Geut Lavesh, Lavesh Adonai Ozit Azar. What's unique about it is this note right here. You see that it's a B flat. It kind of has that little thing right next to it. So if it was not quote unquote modal, it would be Lavesh Adonai. That's just normal major. But with the mode, we take that B and we make it lower. Lavesh Adonai. Sounds a little cooler, right? Just a little cooler. So that is the Adonai Malach mode, very old Jewish mode, one of the three oldest basic modes. And we see with Gershwin, a couple of examples I found right off the top of my head. I'll build a stairway to paradise, that B flat, as opposed to paradise, paradise, with a new step every day. And also, oh Lord, I'm on my way. Oh Lord, I'm on my way. I'm on my way to a heavenly land. Right? It sounds so jazzy. But wait a second, jazz is about 100 years old. Adonai Malach mode is about 1,000 years old. Maybe 700. Yeah, maybe not quite 1,000, but hundreds of years old. So the blues scale has that right? Instead of, that would be just normal. So, is blues and jazz, did they actually take that B flat, that lowered seventh, did they take that from Adonai Malach? I don't know. I know that they are the same. And we'll talk a little bit about sort of that conversation as well. Speaking of, I noticed I was looking at the lyrics for these two examples. I'll build a stairway to paradise, or I'm on my way to a heavenly land, right? This, I just wanted to mention, that the Jewish influence on the music is not just on the music. It's also in some instances on the texts and the themes. And there's this huge theme for us of the promised land. Promised land is different from a homeland. You weren't born there. And I don't know what other peoples there are who have this idea of a different land, right? Who are sort of born in Galut like us, or even, for traditional Jews, Orthodox Jews who are born in Israel, they still talk about the promised land because they talk about when the Messiah will arrive, et cetera, et cetera. And this idea of the promised land has influenced a lot of non-Jewish writing. For if you're German, you know by heart "Kennst du das Land" by Goethe, like we know "To Be or Not to Be." Do you know the land where lemon trees blossom? Do you know it? There, oh there, I desire to go with you, my beloved. There was at some point a Yiddish translation, so instead of lemons, they used etrog, like the citron, and instead of golden oranges, they asked about Rozenkes mit Mandeln. Can you? Okay. Anyhow, so there are a lot of songs in the American songbooks that are influenced by this idea of the promised land. Somewhere Over the Rainbow, right? Sala Salou by Dr. Seuss. There's a faraway land where people are kind, somewhere beyond the horizon, yeah? There's a place for us, this promised place. And of course, Gershwin had Swanee. And speaking of Swanee, before I move into my little Gershwin section, Swanee is an interesting song, right? The birds are singing. It is song time. I know that you yearn for me too. Swanee, you're calling me, this magical place, this promised land. But when you listen to the melody, it's awfully similar to another melody that we know. Let me kind of sing them a little bit side by side for you. So this is the beginning of Swanee. The birds are singing, it is song time. Sounds kind of like Hashivenu Adonai. The banjo strumming soft and low, similar to Elecha v'nashuva, Chadesh, Chadesh Yameinu, Swanee, you're calling me. So almost identical contour, the peak of the song, the climax of the song, the high note is the same. Like it's like, two people with the same exact haircut and the shadow is the same. It's not the exact same melody, but did he do that consciously? Especially since Hashivenu is, return us to this other place. I don't know. Gershwin, he was exposed to Jewish music. I don't think he had a bar mitzvah, but his brother did, and he attended temple sporadically as a kid. But I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. There's some easier answers with other composers. Let's talk about Summertime and Porgy and Bess, for example. So he actually said, I'm still worried about Summertime. It starts my Porgy and Bess. People may think it sounds too Yiddish. He meant for Summertime. He meant for it to sound like a variation on Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child. You hear the similarity. Summertime, sometimes I feel. Yeah, there's a similarity there. But there's also similarity to this famous Russian Jewish lullaby, unfortunately named Pippi, 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 or something like that. Anyhow, here's a recording from the 1920s, which is before he wrote Porgy and Bess. And what amazes me, yes, the melody sounds similar to Summertime. You can chalk that up to coincidence. But what sounds to me even more similar is actually the arrangement on this recording of the lullaby. You'll hear the strings and just the way the orchestra kind of surrounds the song really reminds me of Summertime, even more than the direct quote of the melody. Let's just listen a little bit. So you hear melodically, da, 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 summertime. But again, for me, the opening with the orchestra, and there's some like bells or chimes or something, and like he wrote the exact same opening for Summertime, which I find interesting. I can't sort of talk about Gershwin without mentioning, like, a lot of people do not like him. He was accused, and still is, of exploiting black music. Constant Lambert said at the time, Jews have stolen the Negro's thunder. Tin Pan Alley has become a commercialized wailing wall. And to that, I'll just relate something that Freud said, something that racism and sort of fights over that usually will erupt more about similarities between groups than the differences. And I think when something is so similar, like, this music, although with Gershwin, I often wonder, let's say right now in China, there is a Chinese-born composer who's writing a Chinese opera. We would call it a Chinese opera. We probably wouldn't hear it in the United States. But when composer Judith Weir wrote a Chinese opera, I got to play it, right? Because it was seen as a piece of classical music that someone wrote. And I wonder if it sometimes takes a cross-pollination. Gershwin didn't write Jewish music, right? Bernstein is great piece, West Side Story, is not about the Jews. And maybe if they did write it about the Jews, it would just be seen as a piece of Jewish music, not a piece of music. I don't know. But I wonder that sometimes, if in a way you need the cross-pollination to sort of bring it to a larger audience. One other Gershwin example, people love giving this example of "It ain't necessarily so." Sounds oddly similar to "Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach," right? It's like the Aliyah blessing. That's true, but more interesting to me is this. This is that third step in the ladder, and that those of us, who do music, we know that's like the difference between a major and a minor key. And nowhere in Mozart or anywhere will you find just like from one bar to another, like major to minor. No, you have to go through a whole series of modulations and things to get there. But this kind of fickle major minor thing is also part of the Adonai Malach mode that I talked about. I gave you this example earlier, but a longer example will reveal an interesting thing where in the bottom octave, that's a major key. But then once you go up the octave, it becomes minor, right? So that's kind of a cool feature of Adonai Malach, where it kind of depends which octave you are. It's either going to be major or it's going to be minor. And that's very unique about this mode. And we see that again in the blues scale as well. Okay, let's just look at a couple of melodic motifs. This doesn't necessarily have anything to do with modes. It's just a melody that's super, super popular. We're gonna take the part of it that's popular and it's gonna pop up in all these other pieces of music, and sometimes on purpose, but sometimes no. It's just, that's sort of the mode, that's the fashion, right? So we all know Kol nidrei ve'esarei, and just that little bit we're gonna see in My One and Only. What am I gonna do if you turn me down? Kol nidrei ve'esarei. Right, so we see Kol Nidrei. Hatikva pops up in a million things around the turn of the century. Adudele is a very famous Yiddish art song that starts very dramatically. Ribono shel olam, ribono shel olam, ribono shel olam. And we have songs, how many times a day do I think of you? This is Irving Berlin. Speaking of Irving Berlin, Son of a Cantor. What's interesting with Berlin, as opposed to Gershwin, is that he not only maybe was familiar with sort of traditional Jewish music and traditional Jewish modes, but because his dad was a cantor, he was also familiar with Reform Jewish music. Blue Skies, you all know. Blue skies fall on me, shining on me, falling on me, I don't remember. You can make a connection between that and Rosinkas mit Mandlin. Blue sky, right? Same shape of melody. But this is an example I really love. This top line is by Lewandowski. This is Rechem Arachmenu, and you'll hear, the grandeur of classical Reform music, right? Very classical in style. This is not modal music in any way, shape, or form. And then we have Irving Berlin, down by Adriatic waters, Venetian sons and daughters. You hear the similarity, right? He for sure knew the Lewandowski melody. So you see a lot of that pop up for Irving Berlin. More of the sort of published, more modern Jewish music at the time than, say, whatever we can find in Gershwin. The Jewish mode, I'm going to kind of fast forward right now because I'm running out of time. I promised I'd get back to that Ahava Rabbah mode. Remember this one? It sounds so Jewish, right? Yismechu v'malechutecha shomre, 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 Shabbat v'koreh. Super, super Jewish. One thing that's nice about it, it's on the one hand very Hasidic, but it's also very Middle Eastern. So it's sort of from all sides of the globe. So when you have a musical like Fiddler, they used it endlessly. If I were a rich man. That's not a good example, actually, but all of Fiddler is in this mode, okay? It's sort of the Jewish mode. But what's interesting is you're not going to find a Gershwin piece in this mode. Or Irving Berlin, or Leonard Bernstein, right? They avoided it like the plague because they didn't want it to sound so obviously Jewish. Who's the one composer who used it nonstop? Cole Porter, who was not Jewish. Whoops, wait a second. Here, I'll just give you a little taste.
So Daddy, Yes, my heart belongs to Daddy, so I simply couldn't be bad. Yes, my heart belongs
Here it
to
comes.
Daddy. Da 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 da
Did you
da.
hear that? Da 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 instead of da 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 da. And she does it in these triplets, right? Ba 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 ba, and kind of very sultry. Yeah, it's extremely Jewish. He wrote all. There were so many examples. I only chose two, but it's kind of funny, right? That the non-Jew ended up using that more than the Jewish composers. Last little just bit that I'll say before I talk about Carole King for 5 minutes. Leonard Bernstein, he did write some Jewish music. What's interesting though is in his non-Jewish music use of Jewish themes. What he really loved is the shofar calls. So this is, me sort of approximating in sheet music a shofar call. You have a really, really short little pickup. Ba-bam, and it's usually one of those open intervals of a fifth, right? Ba-bam, ba-dam, ba-dam. And then the Tkiya Gdola is going to go to the second partial. Ba-dam, right? And we hear that in some of Leonard Bernstein, not exactly these, but you're going to hear the Candide Overture, ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-da, short, long, da-da-da, right? It sounds like these ancient horns. Do you hear that? That's sort of shofar-like, yeah? And we see this all over. It's in West Side Story. And so he really liked the shofar calls. Okay, I'm going to move on now to talk a little bit about Carole King. My understanding of what the book talked about, it sort of mentioned this idea of, by the way, Carole King, everything I just said about Jewish music and influence of Jewish music and modes and what have you, none of that applies here. You'd have to stretch this so thin to make a claim. It wasn't her thing. Jewish music did not make its way. I can talk about how black music made its way into Carole King, but not, and vice versa, but not Jewish music. The book talks about a magic chord. It basically says, okay, if you have the chord that is your, what we call tonic, or it's like your home plate, okay? There's the chord right before it that gets you there. We call that the dominant chord. This wants to resolve there. This is all of classical music. And what Carole King does often is instead of this chord, she'll keep the bass, but she'll move the right hand. So instead of, she does. It's a much richer chord, right? And what she's basically doing is two chords on top of each other. This is an F major, and this is a G. So instead of a pure G, she does this bitonal thing. What the book doesn't mention, and the reason I think she was able to do that and other things that I will mention, is one interesting thing. When you look at songwriters or composers of any genre, what is their instrument? I can always tell, looking at the score, for example, Jewish music, I can tell you which composer was a singer and which composer was a pianist and which composer is a guitar player, right? I can tell by how they write. I can tell by the anatomy of the piece. And they'll write a piano part and they'll write the voice part. It doesn't matter. I can tell you if they're a singer or not by how the voice moves. And Carole King is a pianist. Most people in her genres are guitar players. What's the difference? Guitars have a much smaller range, and you also only have, because one hand goes to, specify the chord and the other is strumming. So you really only have 4 fingers determining the notes. So you don't have a lot to play with compared to the piano. The range is enormous and you have 10 fingers. Why does that matter? Well, there are notes that don't sound together when they're close by. These two notes sound awful next to each other. Ow, right? That sounds like somebody poked you with something. That's a B and a C. But if I put two or three octaves between them, I can have the C here and the B here. Suddenly that sounds celestial and beautiful, right? But why? I have 4 octaves to work with. So there are physical reasons having to do with overtones and all kinds of boring stuff that explain why that works, but it works. And to me, that's sort of the key to whatever is special about her music has to do with the fact that she is a pianist and she was able to create harmonies that are more dense and more sophisticated because she had a lot more space to work with. So that magic chord that the book talks about is one example. Look at the song So Far Away. So far away, doesn't anybody stay in one place anymore? It would be so fine to see your face so far, all these chords I've played, not one chord was just a pure C or anything. All of them had notes in them that if you put them next to each other, they would sound awful. But the way that she voices them, because she has all this range to work with, makes it work. Yes, she definitely does the magic chord. It would be so kind instead of kind to see your face. This is another Carole King. This, we call it a major 7th chord. To me, that is what identifies her even more. And it doesn't help to know, right? She does them also, she kind of cascades them. One after the other. And then resolves. What else did I write here? Breakdowns with vocal cadenzas, yes. When this old starts getting me down, people are just too much for me to. On the roof it's peaceful as can be, and there the world below, right here, can't bother me. And let me tell you, we call that a breakdown, when the music kind of stops and only one guy kind of keeps going. Let me tell you now, right smack dab, and then everybody starts again. We have it in there. We have it in the you make me feel like a natural, right? Everything drops out and you only have the voices. So she loved doing these vocal breakdowns where everything cuts out and just the voice keeps going, the major 7th chords, all those more complex chords. Her use of strings. The piano is a percussion instrument. When I hit the note, it's over for me. There's nothing else I can do with it. It's just going to decay on its own, right? So she looked for ways to thicken the sound, to make the sound grow within one note. And she wrote very, very well for strings. When you hear a really good string arrangement, it's likely going to be Carole King. And then another thing I noticed, some of her favorite, best songs are sort of very universal in themes, almost childish. You've Got a Friend, Tapestry, So Far Away. It reminded me in that way of the Beatles, where I would sing it to my children that were toddlers. I would sing Hey Jude, and like they understood every word and they followed. And I realized, yeah, the words are kind of optimistic, a little shallow, but like very universal. And I think she shares a little bit of that with the Beatles as well. Okay, I think at this point I'm gonna open the floor to questions.
Wait, what's the he hit me part? Do we hear the he hit me?
Yes, okay. I'll bring that back.
I was sitting there, it said censor.
You're like waiting for it. Yes, hang on one sec. How do I do this?
Oh, hit slideshow and then share remember how we did it? Yeah.
Oh, right. Wait a second. Yes. Yes. So, oh, okay. So I read somewhere they talked about her censored song that won't be played on the radio, and of course, like I'm dying, hint, hint, Rabbi, to give a lecture about censored music. I can't wait.
I'm
Anyhow, so
sure
of
folks will
course,
come back. This was great. So go for it. We'll
I
do that
had
next.
I had to check it out. So he hit me, but it felt like a kiss. That's the other part of the title. You can understand why people didn't like it. She wrote it. She and Jerry Goffin wrote it because they had some babysitter who her boyfriend hit her, and she said, but I know he loves me so much, or something like that. So then they wrote the song, and when I heard the song, it was fascinating because it didn't. Well, let's hear a little bit of it, and then I'll tell you what I think of it.
He hit me, and it felt like a kiss. He hit me, but it didn't hurt me. He couldn't stand to hear me say that I'd been with someone new. And when I told him I had been untrue, he hit me, and it felt like a kiss. He hit me, and I knew he loved me if he did.
So on and so forth. So a couple of sort of unusual elements to this song. It starts with the bass only. Right, this little kind of, plodding kind of theme, really, really low, maybe a drum, but like no other instruments. And then they come in. So I'm listening. I'm thinking, okay, G major. But then they come in, he hit me. And guess what? That odd note makes it, yes, modal. I don't know of any other modal song by Carole King, but it just makes it sound a little strange. Then it kind of goes and it starts sounding like a song maybe we've heard before, but that beginning is odd. It's a little, you kind of don't know where to place it, and I thought it was very interesting.
And Carole King wrote this one, you're saying?
Yes, this is a
Ah,
Carole
okay.
King song
Got it.
that she won't, she says now that she regrets having written.
Wow, so interesting. The time flew by. Anybody have any questions you want to sort of send Dr. Talley's way? I've been looking at the chat. I haven't seen anything come through. Anything, and maybe this is putting you on the spot, Talley, but are there any more modern examples of Jewish music and songs that, you went through sort of the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, right? Anything happening even today-ish?
Yeah,
We can
yeah,
maybe
I
make
have
that
to.
your second lecture. We can do that a second time if you're.
Yeah. There is, I mean, now it's like you look at it and you're like, okay, this is like blues influenced, right? Well, but what blues was also influenced by, yeah, actually, there was another example in the Gottlieb book somewhere toward the end where he talks about as der Rebbe Elimelech in this part. So and of course Rebbe Elimelech is in and of itself a play on some earlier English folk song about a king who was very rich, but Rebbe Elimelech is very poor. Anyhow, but this then influenced a whole bunch of things. One season, another from fiddler, right? Okay, but that's sort of meant to sound Jewish. Oh, tire, all from the same era. And then the last sort of example he gives on this is Lionel Richie's "So You Know Just Where You Are." I don't know the words, but you know just how to do. So let me tell you so much I love you, from his song Hello, right? And which sounds extremely Jewish. So yes, there are also examples
Wow, interesting.
in sort of pop. But yeah, maybe next time we'll do, the Jewish Taylor Swift.
There we go. There we go. Well, folks, thanks. I hope this put a nice finish to your Memorial Day weekend to be able to sort of enjoy and realize the talent we have right in our own place. It's
Thank
just
you.
her, not only is her repertoire amazing, but her ability to recall this music. Just, even when I put her on the spot with that last question and boom, she came back with Lionel Richie. It was like, wow, I'm in awe. So thank you so much, Tali. Again, you can see her every Friday night at services. And I think you'll have a deeper appreciation of the music she brings to our worship. And listen carefully for what she plays during the silent prayer, during the Amidah. Tali always chooses something that builds out of the themes of the service. And sometimes I'm just amazed that she makes a connection. And it's relatively, at least it feels spontaneous. I think it just comes to you and you just do it. And it's not, it's reminiscent of the song you're evoking, but it's not the full song. And it's just magically woven in. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Everybody have a great
Thank you,
evening.
Rabbi.
Thanks so much, Tali. I appreciate it. And on all, thanks for being here.
Okay.
Bye.